Let's bring in now retired U.S. Marine Colonel Mark Cancian. Colonel, thank you so much for being with us. I want to talk about this ceasefire, but first I'd like to talk about this International Court of Justice hearing on Israel's occupation of Palestine. That is happening. What kind of impact, if any, do you think this hearing will have on what happens in Gaza?
Well, the United States has not typically followed the rulings of these kinds of institutions. The United States has argued that, it has first prerogatives, and then these institutions will very often side with the Palestinians. On the other hand, this does put pressure internationally on the United States and Israel. So even though the findings might be symbolic, they will have some impact. And you see that in the White House, that they are feeling pressure both domestically and internationally to try to come to some sort of ceasefire to end the war.
And Colonel, let's talk about that pressure on the Biden administration. Does the U.S. need to be trying to exert more influence on this situation, on what's happening in Gaza? And if so, how is that done at this point?
Well, I think we saw that in the UN resolutions that the United States is trying to, follow a very narrow path. On the one hand, it doesn't want to have an immediate ceasefire because that would, in effect, be Hamas victory. They would keep hostages, or the Israelis would withdraw entirely, in which case Hamas would be left in control of Gaza. On the other hand, they want to end the violence as soon as they can. They're hoping they can make some sort of deal whereby there might be an in-place ceasefire with some negotiations and a release of the hostages, but Hamas has not been willing to do that.
But is the U.S. sending mixed messages here? Because on the one hand, there is this continued push for a ceasefire. That push is happening right now, yet and still unequivocally supporting Israel, which, as we know, is an important ally for the U.S.
Well, the United States is trying to walk a very fine line here, trying to end the violence while still providing for Israel's security. So far, they haven't been able to find a way to do that. But I think that it is possible that there may be a way forward. The negotiations still continue.
And Colonel, this is a two-parter here. Do you think Israel will continue its offensive in Rafah? It's vowing to do so. But if that happens, what happens to those, million-plus, 1.5 million civilians right now who are in that area?
Well, the Israelis have made it clear that they intend to occupy the entire Gaza Strip, and Rafah is the last major element of that, as we've heard. There's some chance that refugees may be pushed over the border into Egypt. In a sense, Israel's playing a game of chicken with Egypt, threatening to move into Rafah pushing the refugees into Egypt. Egypt doesn't want the Palestinian refugees, although they're building some areas that might be used as refugee camps. It's a very difficult situation. The Israelis have put a March 10th deadline so that we have a little over 2 weeks to see if there's some sort of resolution that we can come to.
All right. Yeah, we will certainly see what happens in that 2 weeks. Colonel Cancian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.